All right, hey, welcome to our very first episode of Naked Faith Podcast. I'm Ron, and I'm one of the hosts of this podcast. And I'm just going to tell you a little bit about myself and kind of where we're at. And I want to briefly introduce my niece, Michelle, and my other co-host, Grace, who's also going to be awesome on this. I don't know where we're going to go with this thing or what's going to happen or who's actually going to listen, if anybody listens. But all I know is that this thing has been on my mind for probably 15 years now of thinking of starting a podcast, and I've always resisted. And so here we are, right? Finally got the courage, I guess, to make this happen. So, so I'd like to just share a little bit about myself, and then I'll give Michelle and Grace an opportunity to share a little about themselves. So, first of all, I've been married to my amazing and wonderful wife, Christina, for 33 years, which is pretty awesome in its own right. And we have 2 children. And so we live in Orlando, and we're all kind of actually spread across the country here. So that's what makes it even more cool that we're not even located together. So that's pretty awesome. But so, hey, this whole thing is about sharing stories and kind of peeling back the layers of the onion in the Bible and really kind of getting real with it. So, I'd like to just share a story, one of many, right, where Jesus has shown up in my life and this has a profound impact. So this story actually starts about 15 years ago as well. Well, no, I guess it was more like 16 years ago, 16 and a half. So, my wife and I were older parents. Our second child, we just discovered that she was pregnant with our second child. And now, mind you, my wife is 3 years older than me. So at the time that my daughter was going to be born, she was going to be 42 and I was going to be 39. And so, and there's a whole story behind that, which we can share later. So what happened was my daughter was born, and, my wife had this corporate job that she loved. And, she, was really looking to advance her career. And then of course life changes, right? So we had a 7-year-old and a newborn. So, after about 6 or 8 months of my daughter being in our lives, I came home from work one day and my wife is sitting on the couch and she's completely in tears. And I'm like, hey, what's wrong? And she said, I don't want to do this anymore. I just want to be a mom. That's all I want to do. And I'm thinking to myself, what are you talking about? You don't want to do this anymore. She goes, I don't want to work. I don't want to work anymore. I just want to be a mom. Now, if you understand, at the time, my wife was the breadwinner of the family. And I'm thinking to myself, seriously? You don't want to work anymore? And she's like, no, I really just want to stay home and take care of our daughter. Like, wow. Okay. So now I had the opportunity, she afforded me the opportunity to be a stay-at-home dad with our son when he was first born. So I had that time with our first kid. And I thought, well, it's only fitting that if we can make this work, then she should have the opportunity, right? And so we did some serious prayers about it, and we decided, you know what, maybe this is the right thing to do, right? But I looked at her and I said, okay, listen, I'm looking at this house that we have, this beautiful house that we had, all this stuff that we had in our lives, all the junk that comes along, right? And I said, I can't afford all this. It's all got to go. Like significantly downsize, like down to the bare bones, right? And so she said, okay. So she crafted this plan, right? And she started figuring out how to sell off stuff. I mean, it was like selling stuff like crazy, right? Like we had just bought a car, and she calls the dealership and said, hey, I want to sell this thing back. And they were like, okay, we're going to take it back, but we'll take it back for a little less, right? And you're like, all right, well, I could eat, it was like $1,000, right? Like, I think I could eat that. All right, well, we get rid of the car, right? And so then I got a 12-year-old car from her aunt to drive. And the biggest thing was the house, right? So like we had to sell this house because there's no way I could afford that house on my own, right? And so we put the house up on the market, and there's a whole like series of things that happened there. And, we ended up doing a short sale of the house because this was back in 2010 when the market was really, really bad. And so I remember the house had been on the market for like 3 months, right? We are like down to pennies in our checking account and barely getting by. And I'm thinking, oh my gosh, I don't even know how this is going to continue, right? Like we're heading to foreclosure at this point, right? And so, man, I got to work. The stress was running through, everything was happening, and I got to work and I sat down on my desk. I'm literally like tears in my eyes, and I'm thinking, I'm failing here. I haven't provided for my family. I haven't given my wife what I wanted. I don't know what to do. And I finally just sat down on my desk and I just started praying. I said, Lord, you always tell us that you only give us what we can handle and no more. And I literally pounded my fist on the desk and I'm like, I can't take it anymore. I can't take it anymore. And then that evening, I get a call from the realtor, and she says, hey, I got somebody that's interested in your house. Now, mind you, this thing has sat on the market for like 4 months. Not one person came by to look at the house, right? And she said, hey, I got somebody that's interested in the house. I was like, are you kidding me? She's like, no, I got somebody that wants to come by and look at it tonight. I said, well, bring them. Hey, we'll make it work,
Right.
So these people showed up and they looked at the house and then they left. And I'm thinking, okay, what's going on here? The realtor called me back like an hour or two later and said, hey, they're very interested, but they have to work out the whole deal because, it's a short sale, right? And so she said, now this can be a long process. This could take another 2 or 3 months. I don't have 2 or 3 months. I don't, 4 weeks later, the bank approved their loan and we're moving out, right? So like this huge burden had been lifted from my life. And so interesting thing, part more of the story was when we first moved to Orlando, because I wasn't working, everything was in her name, right? So none of the houses, the cars, nothing was in my name. And so the real estate agent said, like this is going to affect your credit, blah, blah, blah. You guys won't be able to do anything for, like 7 to 10 years. And like, all right, whatever, we'll deal with it. But at least there's the comfort of knowing that, she gets to live her life and be a mom, which is what she wanted to be. So we started renting a house and, we were okay with that. And then one day, probably 8 months into this rental experiment, it just wasn't working. We rented a house from some friends and it was starting to sour and we didn't really want to ruin that relationship. And so again, I prayed heavily and I thought, everything that we bought was in her name. My name was never on anything. So how does this really affect my credit, right? So my wife and I were sitting there, I was like, hey, what's the harm? I'll fill out the pre-app and then we'll see what happens, right? I won't even put you on it, Sure enough, I got approved for like $200,000. I was like, oh my gosh, right? And then we found a house for 150. And I was like, this is just all lining up, right? And so like we bought the house, we moved into it, we lived there for 6 or 7 years. I ended up selling it for twice of what I paid for it, which is all really cool. And then, we found the house that we're living in now, and that was 16 years ago. And so, now I have a very rambunctious 16-year-old daughter who rules the world. And so yeah, that's kind of one of those faith stories that just has always had a profound impact on my life. It's like, when you think you're down, you just got to have faith. You got to follow the faith and things will work out. No matter how bad it is, things will work out. So, so yeah.
Yeah. Wow.
So there you go.
For sharing.
Yeah.
Yeah. It sounded like divine timing to me, in a way. Of like everything lining up perfectly. Like you getting a phone call that night. It's like, you never know. Yeah.
Yeah, that's the part that blew me away, right? Like here I am, I'm like on my wit's end, and then literally that night the phone rings and they're like, hey, somebody wants to come by and look at your house.
Mm-hmm.
Seriously?
Right.
I didn't even know what to
Right.
think, right? So
Yeah. It's like one of those things you don't know, like, if that happened because you prayed, or would that have happened had you not prayed, you know? It's interesting.
yeah.
But
Well, I mean,
it definitely seems like it lines up. I get it.
yeah, I mean, well, obviously I would say that, it's definitely because I prayed or because I
Mm-hmm.
had faith, right? Like I
Mm-hmm.
totally felt that this was the direction we were being led to, right? Like she was supposed to be a mom
Mm-hmm.
and I was supposed to make that happen for her one
Yeah.
way or another, right? So, but I mean, everything lined up, like the whole selling of everything. I mean, like when I say fire sale, I'm talking fire sale. She literally sold everything. Like we made a list. Furniture's got to go, house has got to go, cars has got to go. We got to get into a zone that I can afford, right?
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, it all worked out.
Yeah.
So
Awesome.
yeah,
Yeah.
so
And it's like faith is that belief that everything works out, you know, in your favor.
faith
I'd say.
is a belief in that. Yeah, you know what? Let me ponder on that for a minute because I think there's another definition. I'm trying to think. Of
I
how
know,
I'm
I know.
gonna say Yeah.
That's just what I thought of in the moment. I'm like,
Yeah, no, that's
seems...
good. That's good.
Pretty good.
Thank you. Yeah. Michelle, do you have anything you want to share or introduce yourself
All
at
right,
all?
my name is Michelle. I am your behind the scenes person, so I will be talking to everybody on social media. So definitely make sure you follow those. We'll give you more information later. But yeah, I am a stay at home mom. I am a mom to two boys. They are 10 and 6, and they are as crazy as ever. I homeschool both of them, and it's funny how Ron was talking about his story because that's kind of like how me and my husband we've been married for almost 14 years now. And I just came home one day and I was like, I was like, I just want to be a mom. Like I just want to stay home and take care of them. Like I don't want anybody else to do that job for me. So we did the same thing. We prayed. And we were in the middle of buying a new house too. Like we were selling our old house and we were in the process of buying my husband's grandparents' house. And it was a God thing. Like we prayed about it and we ended up getting our house. We paid off all of our debts so we could buy this house. And then I became a stay-at-home mom and I've been with them for 5 years and it's just been awesome. But before that, I think, and we'll probably get into an episode about this because Ron has asked me to do this, but I had a really difficult pregnancy with both of my boys. They both had extended time in the NICU and stuff, and that's a whole story on its own. I think it would be a
Right.
whole episode that maybe in
Right.
the future we will get into, but yeah.
For sure.
So I'm excited to be on board with this for you guys. And like I said, I will be behind the scenes mostly. So you won't see me all the time.
Right. Yeah. Well, thank you, Michelle.
Yeah.
So I got to say though, like when I first put this idea out there, right? Like on social media, hey, I'm going to do this thing. I really hadn't talked to Grace or Michelle at all about this. I mean, Grace knew because, that's a whole, we're in a
Well,
program together.
I didn't know until you posted it on Facebook. I had
Oh,
no
well, I
idea.
thought I told you my passion project.
I
But,
don't think you did.
oh, well, anyway, so I just want to say that evening, I started getting texts from Michelle like, hey, check this thing out.
Yeah.
Hey, what do you think about this? I was like, man, I don't know who's more excited about this, her or me.
You're talking specifically the designs for the like logo and everything.
Yeah, she's
Right.
sending me all kinds of stuff.
I
Like,
spent that night. So I made like the original logo and I sent it to him. I was like, hey, what do you think about this? And then I spent that night probably for a good like 3 or 4 hours. And granted, I have never like made a video or edited a video or anything in my life. And I spent like a good 3 or 4 hours editing this like commercial video for him and sent it to him. And he's like, what is this? And I think you even had like dinner with my parents that night after I'd sent it to you guys. So
I did, yeah. They had just gotten back from their cruise, and so we were having dinner with them
yes,
before
yeah.
they headed home. And yeah. And your mom was like,
So
she was up till like 2 o'clock in the morning. I was like, what?
yeah.
Oh. Yeah.
So
And for those that are listening that might not know, Michelle is Ron's niece,
yes,
correct?
yes,
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. And Ron and I met like basically taking an online class and we're in the same group. So,
Correct. Yep.
yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
So what about you, Grace? Let's learn about Grace.
Yeah. I'm from Cleveland, Ohio, born and raised. I'm still here now, but I'm about to be 25 in just over a month. So, I feel like my life is just getting started, but as far as my like religious faith background, if you want me to get into that, I started because I moved around a lot for the first 8 years of my life. So my family, we were involved in some things in church and whatnot. Like we started with Church of the Brethren specifically, was like, whatever. I don't even know what denomination that is or what it's classified as. But when we eventually moved to what I consider to be my hometown, is a suburb of Cleveland. We moved there when I was 9, and I basically grew up in a non-denominational church. So, nothing specific. It was just it's like, because Aurora, the city of Aurora, is so, I was going to say so old, but so historic. The town, I want to say the church was formed in like 1809. And it looks like your classic, like, white church steeple in town. Like, it looks like your most quintessential church you've ever seen. But growing up there, I mean, everyone was always super kind. And now the church is even promoting, like, hey, we are open to everyone of all kinds of backgrounds. So it is a really great church. Something about it just seems like peace and kindness with everyone I've ever really interacted there. But I grew up in church choir, basically. I've always loved singing ever since I was like 4 years old, and I eventually ended up in like children's church choir. I was never able to do choir in school because I did band, but I did church choir. I did church choir for a very long time. And
what instrument did you play?
In band, I played alto saxophone.
Ah,
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I was a trumpet player.
Okay.
I played clarinet.
Yes. I see it.
So you guys were what we would call reed lickers.
Okay. I've literally never heard that before.
Really?
Okay.
Haven't?
Yeah. But no, I was actually, band is a whole other thing, but I was actually like drum major for a season, or assistant drum major. But yeah, it was a lot of fun. But anyways, music has always been kind of the main thing of my life. Something about that and how much I love to sing feels very connected to my soul and my faith and spirituality. So that's very important to me. That and nature, being in nature. I feel like I grew up, like the Church of the Brethren that I started at, they have their own like summer camp ground, like in Northeast Ohio. So, I grew up going to that summer camp pretty much every year, until maybe like freshman or sophomore year of high school. And that was just a fun time to really like connect with the world around me and really learn more about nature and just getting to like meet people in different areas of my life. I don't even know where I'm going with the rest of this, but I just feel like music and nature are the two biggest things for me when it comes to my faith and spirituality. I've always been tied to music in some way. I have a degree in musical theater. Like I pursued performance because music is just that much a part of my life. And I feel like just getting to sing in church every so often and sing hymns is always peaceful in a way too. So for me at least. That's
make an album.
Yeah.
Look, I've written songs before, but I've never recorded anything, nor am I like super good on the guitar or piano. I'm very beginner on both instruments, but I can hold my own, I'd say. So
I'm not a good singer, but we can be your backup singers.
Thank you.
Yeah, well, I don't know if you want me as your backup singer, but yeah.
Yeah, it's okay. I got my other friends, but yes, thank you. Yeah,
I
no,
mean,
I would love to, yeah, record music at some point. Figure out what I do want to record, but
we need a
yeah.
theme song. Just saying.
Yeah,
Yeah.
we do need a theme song. I thought you said you knew someone that could make one, but we haven't talked about it in a while. But
We
that's
haven't talked about it in a while, but hey, how cool would it be if our theme song was sung by one of our hosts?
Yeah.
yeah,
That would be
yeah,
cool.
yeah.
That would be
And it's one of
cool.
those things where like my entire life, people always say like, "Oh, Amazing Grace," are you gonna sing that and everything like that, or like I'm named. I don't know if I was. I don't remember how I got my name. I don't think I was technically named after that song, but that's just one of those things where like you're named Grace, people are like, "Oh, Amazing Grace." I'm like, "Yes, thank you, thank you." I've
I
never
don't
heard
think I
that
really
one
made
before.
that connection until, well, we talked about this once before when we were planning this, but like, yeah, I don't think it really hit home until you just now said it. I was like, oh, Amazing Grace. Yeah.
The song,
Yeah. I
the
was
song
like,
connection. That's funny.
okay, so let's not have Amazing Grace as our theme song. We could have a
I
song
mean,
by the Amazing
By
Grace.
Amazing Grace.
thank you,
Yeah.
thank you. I'm like, I think it's not like it's a copyright song. I don't think because it's so old now. But anyways, we can discuss that later. More of that later. Yeah. So, but well, I feel like there's more I could talk about with my experience with the church and everything. Because my church also, we did something called work camp, which was like a group mission trip that we did. You could do it in middle school and high school, where we would travel to more underprivileged communities in the United States, usually within a couple states of Ohio. So I've been to Wisconsin, West Virginia, Maryland, Indiana, Pennsylvania, just more rural communities. And these communities will sign up to get some kind of home repair on their house. Like I've helped build like decks and wheelchair ramps, and will repaint houses with paint that's chipping away. So it's just like rebuilding communities. It seems that way, like getting to really help these people that have any kind of damage to their house, or make their home more accessible and safer. So I grew up doing that as well, and that was through my church. And yeah, there's just somewhere along the line, I think some people tend to share their views on religion in the church, and that makes you question your own. And you're like, well, everyone talks about having such negative experiences with religion in the church, and I just was confused, like in high school, and by the time I got to college, I just didn't really partake. I just kind of was pursuing my own thing, doing my own thing. I wasn't consistent with it. Because yeah, I just would hear people in my life that my friends and things, everyone has their own experience, and just hearing about pain that people have endured, and I didn't know anything about that. Like, I didn't know that was a thing. I grew up in a very kind church, open and loving. I never experienced anything that myself. But at the time, my church was also not that diverse, from what I could tell. But it's not like it's not like there were any sermons preaching any kind of hatred to any group of people. So I really had no idea how churches treated certain communities, and how that's affected people. And now that I've, been on my own as an adult for a while, I'm just kind of finding my own way and my own values, morals, views, and beliefs. And it's just nice to have like my own relationship with faith and spirituality, with God, with the universe, whatever you want to, call it. I feel like we all have our own way of labeling it and connecting with it. So.
Wow, that's awesome. I get that. So actually, that's a great segue, right? Because
Yeah.
I've been asked by lots of people like, oh, so you're going to do this podcast? That's really cool. What's it going to be about? What's it supposed to be? Right. And so that's actually awesome what you just shared. Right. So why am I doing this, or why are we doing this? Right. Like, man, I think, so 2020 was a really awful year in my life
Yeah.
for many reasons, right? Not just because of COVID. There's some other personal things that happened that I've been asked not to share, so I won't share by the person who was mostly affected by it. But, when you're sitting at home and you can't really, life has slowed down dramatically, right? So, at the time, I have another niece who's from Cleveland, was actually living with us at the time. And so, there's 5 people in my house. My son and my niece were both in college at the time. And then my daughter's going to school. My wife, is now working from home. And now all of a sudden I have to work from home. I'm thinking, so there's 5 people that all have to be on the computer and all this stuff, so you really actually start paying attention to what's kind of going on in the world. Before, like, I didn't really pay attention, I guess. And it was really that year that I started paying attention, and then, you get these posts. And of course, I think, that whole time was designed. So a part a little about it, what I think is, we talk about there's a spiritual realm, and I believe that the spiritual realm is real. I really believe that there's like a multi-dimensional aspect to spirituality, right? Like there's this spiritual realm that's working in the background that is trying to destroy everything that God has created. Of course, we already know how it's going to end, right? The Bible tells us. We already know the end. The Avengers win. God wins, right?
Yep.
But while we're here, doesn't mean that the evil one, Satan, whatever you want to call that person, that entity, is still working, right? And so what I started to notice is like, man, there is a lot of hate that happens. And then what really bothered me the most was not that there was a lot of hate, but it was a lot of hate from my friends that are Christians, that proclaim to be Christians, right? Like attacking one another, and, because you don't align politically or you don't agree with some mandate or something like that, and you really got to thinking like, is this how we're supposed to be as Christians? I mean, we don't have to agree in the material world on how everything's ran, but from a spiritual faith perspective, we should be thinking like, what is it that, how should we be acting in the world, right? And I really don't think that Jesus wants us to be hateful to one another. I think that, when we're divided as a church, like that's what sends the message, right? So like you pointed out, Grace, oh, you didn't really experience this, but I have numerous stories of people that, have gotten turned off from church or whatever because, they had a bad experience at church. They were judged, or they were told that they're going to go to hell or whatever because of some belief they have.
Yeah.
And I keep thinking like, is that really like what Jesus would have said to us? Like if he were with us today, if he were alive today, walking the earth, is this what he would say to us? Like, oh, well, I don't like you because you're wearing a yellow dress, or I don't like you because of this. And I'm like, I don't really think that that's like, I feel like we forget. We've lost so much of what the messages that were being told in the Bible are really saying, right? So I kind of equate this like there's the doctrine of God, which is really what we're supposed to be thinking and believing, right? And then there's the doctrine of man. And I think man, conflates how the church, it conflates the message, right? So like you look at, for instance, the whole idea of how a church is structured. This is a man-made element, right? So like the fact that there's pastors, in a church. And oh, by the way, when we look at churches, you think, okay, well, what qualifies somebody to be a pastor? Oh, well, they have to have gone to college, and they have to have a Bible degree, and they have to have done all these types of years in theological study. And then you go back to like, okay, so Jesus was here and he picked 12 average normal people who actually at the time would have been like the nobodies in society, right? To be his disciples, to be the people that spread his message after he was gone. And these people weren't trained. They weren't rabbis in the church. They weren't Jewish scholars. I mean,
They were fishermen
they were
and
fishermen, and
carpenters and yeah.
carpenters, right? Exactly. And so you go like, okay, so where did we get to this point where, like, oh, I can't, I can only be like, I can't baptize somebody because I've not been to, theology school. Like, I don't think that's how it was supposed to be, right? Like, what was the Great Commission? The Great Commission was go and make disciples of everyone, everyone. Mm-hmm. So that means you, me, anybody else who may be listening to this, like we're all supposed to be disciples and we're all supposed to be spreading this message. So like, that's kind of where I get like, I go, where does this get lost? And how do we like get back to, like you look on social media, right? And sometimes you get these stories and, it's funny because my daughter was just in the play Mean Girls. And there's this scene, I don't know if you guys are familiar with Mean Girls. I know, Grace, you are. But
yes.
If you're familiar with Mean Girls, right, the musical, there's a scene, there's a section in the play where Regina gets hit by a bus, right? And so the two not main characters, but they're pretty prominent characters. So it's Janice and Damon. Damon's his name? Yeah, Damien. So Damien comes out to the front of the stage and they're like, oh, we should probably take this moment to talk about the power of social media. And so they go into this whole thing about this diatribe of social media, like how negative comments hurt people, but how positive comments can also be hurtful, right? And I was like, as I'm watching the play over the weekend, I was like, oh my gosh, these guys are so true. Like that whole line is so true, right? Like, because what happens, right? You get on social media and people only post the positive things of their life, and you think, oh man, their life is awesome. When in reality, you don't see we all go through it. Yeah, we all go through it. You don't see the stuff that's like what's happening in the background, right? Like not everything is awesome, right? Like so anyway, so I guess that's where I kind of got to. So I have this thing, and I'm going to read this passage in the story, and maybe we can talk about this. But this comes from Luke chapter 10, and it's verse 25. Hold on, I lost my place on my app. All right. So there's a point in time when Jesus is, in his ministry, and he's asked by one of the rabbis who's trying to trip him up. And it's the most important commandment, right? And so Jesus says, here's this passage. It says, one day, an expert in religious law stood up to test Jesus by asking him this question, "Teacher, what should I do to inherit eternal life?" And Jesus replied, "What does the law of Moses say? How do you read it?" And the man answered, oh, I just lost my place again. The man answered, you must love the Lord your God with all your heart, all your soul, and all your strength, and all your mind. Now, I think we can all get that part, right? But here's the kicker. And love your neighbor as yourself. And then Jesus responds, right, Jesus told him, do this and you will live. The man wanted to justify his actions, so he asked Jesus, and who is my neighbor? And Jesus replied with a story. A Jewish man was traveling from Jerusalem down to Jericho, and he was attacked by bandits. They stripped him of all his clothes, beat him up, and left him half dead beside the road. By chance, a priest came along, but when he saw the man lying there, he crossed to the other side of the road and passed him by. A temple assistant walked over and looked at him lying there, but he also passed by on the other side. Then a despised Samaritan came along, and when he saw the man, he felt compassion for him. Going over to him, the Samaritan soothed his wounds with olive oil and wine and bandaged them. Then he put the man on his own donkey and took him to an inn, where he took care of him. The next day, he handed the innkeeper 2 silver coins, telling him, "Take care of this man. If his bill runs higher than this, I'll pay you the next time I'm here." Now, which of these 3 would you say was a neighbor to the man who was attacked by the bandits? Jesus asked. And the man replied, "The one who showed him mercy." And then Jesus said, "Yes, now go and do the same." So I think about that passage, right? And it's kind of, to me, it's profound and powerful. And so there's like so much layers into this passage, right? Like, I don't know. What do you guys think? When I read that to you, what did you think?
I was actually reading along with it on my app as well, which is why I was looking down. And I was like, oh yeah, the Good Samaritan, duh. But, you know, it's one of those parables you hear growing up that it's like, I haven't really revisited this as an adult. So it's definitely interesting to think about it now and everything that's happening in the world. And yeah. Yeah. Like, I understand. I feel like I understand exactly what this passage is, and I feel like I understand why people do the things that they do in the world, whether it's inherently good or bad if you label it like that. Like, I feel like I have a deeper understanding of humanity. So.
It's not good.
Well,
it's not good.
Yeah, great time of suffering. And by great, I mean horrible. So, yeah. That's what I have to say for now, but I could say more for sure.
Yeah, well, so like what I got out of this, right, as I'm reading it, you know, of course, again, I think I told you, I shared with you two prior to starting this, was like, I'm this Bible nerd, right? Like I read this stuff, and then of course I get distracted by the context, right? Like, oh, I want to know what that really means. What was happening at that time? And then I get so caught up in researching. I'll read this simple passage, and then I'll spend the next 2 hours like going to figure out like, oh, what was happening in first century Jerusalem when Jesus was alive, and like, what does this all mean, right? And so then I think like, okay, so here's this, you know, first of all, like the first thing that sticks out is it's an expert in religious law, right? So this was a Pharisee, someone who was preaching in a synagogue, who's trying to trip up Jesus. Okay, so we all know the point there, right? And then, you know, he answers the question, hey, love God with all your mind, heart, and soul. Like, to me, that's a no-brainer, right? But then this love your neighbor as yourself. Like, I think that's the part people struggle with. Like, love your neighbor as yourself.
Yeah, because not only is, like, I didn't realize the phrase was love your neighbor as yourself. And, like, you know, we always hear about love thy neighbor, and that's it. But if we think of it as love your neighbor as yourself, and you think about how many people don't even love themselves fully, no wonder they can't love their neighbor. Yeah. You know?
Yeah, good
because
point.
They can't even, they for some reason don't have the capacity to fully love themselves first. And it's like, if you can't do that, that's why people then project their hatred and fear onto, and stereotypes onto other people, because they're not able to love themselves fully. So how could they love their neighbor as well? But then there's another side of a coin where people only love, like, you know, people who tend to overgive their love and only love other people, but they're not able to be there for themselves, you know?
Yeah, so like that's interesting because I don't think I've ever thought of it in that capacity as you just said it, right? I always read this. No, like I always read this and I think, well, who loves you more than you, right? Like nobody loves you more than you, right? So like, well, if I can love the world the way I love myself, well then, wouldn't the world be a better place?
Right.
But I never really thought about the aspect of, you're right. There are people in the world that don't like themselves, right? They hate themselves so much. Who they become or what they're doing. Yeah. Like,
or because of like people feel pressured by society of any kind of standard, whether it's financial, you know, your beauty and appearance, like whatever it is. Like if you're not able to measure up to society, then people feel cast out and left to their own devices in a sense. And there's just a lot of insecure people in the world. There's just a lot of suffering in a lot of different ways.
Right.
So
I think this is a good passage also for like newer like Christians, because like for me, so I just like came into this Christian world. I just was recently saved, probably like 2 years ago, so I'm still like fairly new at this. But just as like a newer Christian, like you're always expecting to see these like perfect people, like they have their life all together, and then in all actuality, like they don't. Like as a Christian, you don't have your life together, and that's why you have Jesus, and that's why you have the Bible here to guide you in the way that he wants you to go. So I think this is a good passage just for newer Christians, saying like you don't have to be all together. You don't have to be perfect. Yeah. So
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I feel like an even bigger part of this conversation is the fact that not everyone on earth is a Christian, and they don't have to be. And it's like navigating that of being able to just coexist with other cultures and ethnic backgrounds and religious identities. It's all different and diverse, and yeah, that's where things can get a bit sticky and tricky when people feel they have to like force their views onto others of like, yeah, in that sense. But I believe, well, I've read Eat, Pray, Love by Elizabeth Gilbert, and it was then adapted into a movie, but it was like a memoir of hers. And for part of it, she goes to Indonesia to study with a guru. And the guru says that basically all different religions are the same strings on a guitar. You know, they all have their own way of doing things, but it all leads back to the same thing. And I believe that. I feel like, yes, every religion has their own beliefs, but it's all our own way of believing and describing what the universe is, maybe. I mean, like, are certain like astrophysicists and scientists, are they religious in a sense just because they're studying space and the universe? You know?
So they used to be.
They used to be, right. Well,
You know,
yeah.
I mean, when you look at, Socrates and Galileo, those people,
Yeah.
I mean, they were believers, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so at some point, I don't know, that might be a whole nother topic in its own right. Like when did the science community abandon faith, right? But, like I think, the Big Bang Theory makes perfect sense to me, right? How did the universe come into existence? It makes perfect sense to me, right? Like, because something had to cause that reaction.
Mm-hmm.
So God spoke, God used words, spoke it into existence. What, and then, so that's an interesting topic, right? Like, so you get the young earthers that will go through Genesis and count the years back and say, well, the earth is only 6,000 years old. So all that stuff is fake. Like, it can only be 6,000 years old, right? And then you got all this evidence, this scientific evidence that says, the earth has really been around for billions and billions of years, right? But then you look at, like they've been able to go out and talk about, like, there's these cataclysmic events that happened that altered the earth, right? And so, I think about, like, okay, if you look at space in its own right and the whole thing, like, there's so much complication to the universe that it had to be created, right? There's an intelligent designer behind this, right? And it didn't just happen by chance. I mean, you think about, like, there's scientific evidence to prove, like, where the earth is in relation to the sun, where it is in relation to the other planets, and even the tilt of the earth. If it was half a degree off, life wouldn't exist on this planet, right? So there's this delicate balance, right? We are the perfect distance from the sun for life to exist. If we were 1 inch closer or 1 inch further away, life couldn't exist on the planet, right? And you think about, like, this is the complicated part. And so if you think about, if there is a creator that loves us so much that he designed this perfect universe that everything had to be exactly right for us to even be here, then why do we have to spend all of our time hating on each other just because you don't necessarily agree with me, right? Like, we can have differences of opinion, but we can still be friends,
Right.
Mm-hmm.
And I guess I think that's where I go, like, you look at the political landscape out of 2020, right? The whole point was to cause division amongst us because we don't see things the same way. Yeah, and it's still going on, right? And it's like, why do we have to, just because I might vote this way or vote that way or might think, this way's better of making the world work? Like, okay, that's all material world, right? But if we're Christians, we can all agree that, we're supposed to be here to love one another and make disciples, right? I mean, that to me, that's the basic tenets,
Yep.
Yeah. I definitely understand all of that. I also understand, if certain people happen to see this or listen to this, like, they don't agree. They don't agree with what you're saying. Maybe they don't agree with what I say. Everyone has their own opinion on things, and with what you said of, like, well, we can vote differently but still be friends, and it's like that. I understand that statement, but with everything that's happening right now and everything that's been happening, a lot of people don't feel that way, because there's certain absolutes, but it's like basically people assume, like, if you're gonna vote for a certain person and they treat people a certain way, that shows me what kind of human being that you are. If you're voting for someone who doesn't support basic human rights, it's hard to love thy neighbor. If you're not, like, you know what I mean? It's just hard. It's hard when people have certain viewpoints. It's all about loving your neighbor, loving your enemy. If you're able to truly love everyone, yes, I do think we can be at that point of what you're saying, Ron, but it's with everything that's politically happening right now, it's really hard to do that when there are people who don't support basic human rights.
I think it's hard because we make it hard.
I mean, yeah. But yeah.
No, I mean, I do, right? Like, how could you have a conversation with someone, right? And get to know them on a personal level and think, man, I really love this person. They're a really cool person, blah, blah, blah. And then you find out, oh, they don't vote the same way I do. And now all of a sudden, like, what did that change? Right. Cause I think it's not a black or white answer, right? Like, it's not a like, oh, well, if you voted that way, well, then you obviously don't care about the world, or, you voted that way, so you just want death and destruction, right? Like, I don't think it's not a black and white answer, right? I think what the problem is rather than focusing on, like, oh, I don't like you because you voted differently than me, like, spend time getting to know the person, and maybe you'll find out that there's certain reasons, right? Like, it's just complicated. It's not an easy black or white answer, right? Like, oh, well, I didn't like the way that person represented something, and this person, blah, blah, blah. But I mean, at the end of the day, they're all liars, right? So,
Yeah.
How do you know when a politician's lying?
You just assume they are.
Yeah.
Like,
No, their lips are moving.
Oh, got it.
And I think a lot of it is just like personal experiences. Like, everybody has a different experience. Everybody grows up differently. Everybody is different. And I don't think a political view should define that particular person. So I see it.
Yeah. I understand that. I do. Like, personally, for example, my grandma, love her. We have a great relationship, but politically we do not see eye to eye. And I'm at a point now as an adult where I feel like, okay, I want to be able to just, like, sit down and actually have this conversation and just hear you out. I just want to see what is going on. And yeah, it's because when you're talking with someone and you're getting to know the person, like you were saying, Ron, yes, obviously, like, I can love the person for who they are. But if they if I get to know them more and they start to share certain opinions of, like, or say certain remarks about certain groups of people, I'm not okay with that.
Right.
No,
like,
yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so I get that. I totally get that, what you're saying, right?
I'm
and
with
I think
that.
And it tends to be labeled and categorized as a specific kind of political view.
Right.
And that's why people then assume. But yes.
Yeah. No, I totally understand where you're coming from in that angle. And I think, like, okay, so going back to, circling it back to why are we doing this, right? Like, I think that comes back to the whole quintessential idea behind what I really hope that this becomes is, at the end of the day, it's all about Jesus, right? And it's all about Jesus's love for people. And, I should be able to look at anybody and see them through the eyes of Jesus, which means that they're all loved and they're all special and they're all like, we're all humans. It doesn't matter what we look like on the outside or what we, who you love or who it's at the end of the day, if we could all treat each other with respect and love, just think about, again, we don't have to agree on everything, but if I could come from a place of respect, I respect you for who you are. I respect you because you're a great person. I love you because you're a great person. And we don't really have to see eye to eye on everything. But at the end of the day, that's not what's important. What's important is that you are a person that has feelings, that has, you hurt and you love the same way I do. And, and I kind of, that's so, all right, sum this up. Like, why do I want to do this? Because there's many people out there that have a story to tell. There's many topics that we can discuss over, however long this thing goes, right? Hopefully in 10 years, we're still doing this. I don't know, right? I don't really know where this is going to go. But, when I think about people that want to come on and share their story, like that's transformation. Let's get messy, right? Because not every story is perfect, right? Like people live messy lives. We all live messy, complicated,
painful
yeah. Everything's running at you 100 miles an hour and we all have to survive, right? And I think the more stories that people hear and you realize, you might listen to 10 stories and there's one of them you're going to oh, I can identify with that. I can identify with what that person's going through, right? Because that's what I'm going through, right? And then you start to realize oh, we're not perfect. We're not Barbies, right? We all have these things that are going on in our lives that are complicated and distracting and drawing our attention away from the things that are important. But I feel if somebody can, when people sit down and share their testimony, there's power in that. There's a lot
Absolutely.
of power in that.
Absolutely.
And this is a good segue into our Facebook page. So if you're not following us on Facebook, follow us. We are Naked Faith Podcast. But once a week, every Monday, we post a question of the week. And we will try to start posting them to relate to our podcast. But since this is our first podcast, it's been kind of whatever we come
General.
up with. Yeah. So this week's question is, what do you secretly believe about God but feel afraid to say out loud? So if you go to Facebook and follow us, make sure you answer the question and we might talk about it on our next podcast.
Yeah, that's definitely a thinker.
Yeah, give us
that's
topics.
Definitely a thinker.
And the other thing I would say is if you want to come on and share your testimony, let us know that too. Because, we'd love to have people that's really the crux of it. Right. Mm-hmm. But, so, I think a teaser, we have kind of, we've talked about some topics that we do want to kind of discuss. And so I'm going to give you the theme that might happen over the next several episodes, which is we want to talk about, women in the Bible and women's role in leadership, really in particular. And where has, where has the mainstream thought differ from where is there a conflict, right? And so there's a couple of passages that talk about, women are secondary, blah, blah, blah. But then there's all these women that were leaders in the Bible, right? And so that's in stark contrast to what these two passages in the Bible that people hang their hats on, right? So I think we want to talk about that, right, next week. And there's 12 that come to mind in my mind, but there's many more. And we'll probably just break down, each one, I think, or, we don't know where to go. But if there are, what I'd really love to do, because I think, Grace, you mentioned you have a friend who's there was someone you wanted to reach out to and see if they would come on. I also have a friend who's a female pastor that I'm going to reach out to her and see if maybe she'd come and talk to us. So, yeah. Mm-hmm. Now, logistics. Besides our Facebook page, how else could people see this thing? Are we going to put it on Spotify and?
We will figure it out.
Yeah.
Yes.
We'll let you know on social media. So like
I feel like we could definitely post it to my YouTube channel for the video aspect of it. Because I already have that, and if you want to check that out, it's Grace T Video. So we'll at least have the video for people to watch. As far as listening, I'm sure we'll be able to figure something out with Spotify, hopefully Apple Podcasts, maybe someday iHeartRadio.
Yeah.
But like, there's a lot of even the Odyssey app. Like, I know, but there's a lot of different kinds of apps out there. I don't even fully know, but we're gonna learn and figure it out, and you will be able to find us.
So definitely follow us on Facebook at Naked Faith Podcast. We're also on Instagram, same handle, Naked Faith Podcast, and you can also email us if you have any questions or if you're interested in joining on an episode at nakedfaithpodcast@gmail.com.
Great.
Ooh.
Love. And I just want to say one more thing from what you said earlier, Ron. Humans are more alike than we are different.
Yes.
Yeah. And that's why I would love to hear more stories of like just how similar we actually are as humans, and maybe we can learn to love more. Because you also said like to live through Jesus, and it's about him. I get that. I personally would say Jesus maybe didn't really care about being like the spokesperson of Christianity or something. Yeah, we're gonna wrap up soon, and we'll figure things out. But I for me personally, I just think about it as being love. You know, Jesus isn't doesn't have to be the specific label, but I do know that people align with that belief. So yeah. But I love living through love, you know, being able to share.
Right,
love.
absolutely.
That's all it is. It's love.
It's love. Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly. So.
But, anyways.
Cool. All right. So I was wondering if we were actually going to make 60 minutes, but we did.
Yeah.
It's been a great conversation. So.
Yeah.
So hopefully people get something out of this, and thanks for listening.
Yes, thank you everyone for listening and watching, and we hope to see more of you soon. Thank you for being here.
Yep, thank you.
So, all right.
Bye.
Bye.